Morning, all. A sign that it's the off season. Let us discuss Eddie Livingstone. Now, before we get into this, since the last time I talked about Eddie Livingstone, I've added 2 books to my collection that if you want to read about the damage Eddie Livingstone tried to inflict and the damage that the NHL tried to inflict on him, I would recommend The First Season by Bob Duff. There's no paid anything here. I don't do paid sponsorships, so it's free advertising. And this right here, Deception and Double Cross, How the NHL Conquered Hockey. Now I'm going to read a very small, very, very small portion out of this here. Just a quote, just a quote here from the owners as they put together the National Hockey League. You haven't invited Eddie Livingstone into the new group? No, said George thoughtfully. We haven't. I guess we forgot. Anyway, he is still a member of the National Association, which is the National Hockey Association. And as a franchise in that fine body, of course, he may have a little difficulty finding a place to play, any teams to play against, because the rest of us just resigned from the association and formed a new league. Wink. Eddie still has his team and association franchise. Good luck to him. What about that drink? It's strictly legal, said Sam Lichtenhein, who we will discuss in this video. Owner of the Wanderers, he dropped by and assured us, we didn't throw Eddie Livingstone out. Perish the thought. That would have been illegal and unfair. Also, it wouldn't have been sporting. We just resigned and wished him a fine future with the National Association franchise. They just resigned. So, the NHL 5 years ago had their big centennial. But in reality, the National Hockey Association was the NHL. The NHL was formed to get rid of Eddie Livingstone. Now, I did this video a long time ago. I did this, but honestly, it's one of my favorite topics to cover, and it's not like a guy who passed away so many years ago we're going to have a whole lot of new information on, but I'm hoping that there's some stuff in this that I didn't cover the first time around, because it's genuinely entertaining to see that an owner can be this unpopular, and I cannot imagine a league. Just think about it. Let's just say that there was an owner in baseball, an owner in basketball that was just such an annoying guy to deal with, that every other owner in the league meets without him and says, so we need to change the name of the league so we can get rid of him. And that's what they did. So, nicknamed Livy, and in a lot of the stuff I was reading, he's referred to as Livy, which I didn't see originally in the first video I was doing research for. So Livy, as we shall refer to him from here going forward, Eddie Livingstone, Livy, part Harold Ballard, not a good start, part George Steinbrenner. It sounds like a lot of Steinbrenner, honestly. And if you're a Yankees fan, or if you remember Steinbrenner from baseball, some yikes going on there, isn't there? With a smattering of P.T. Barnum. He liked the just spectacle, right? And he liked to fight. This guy, he absolutely enjoyed arguing. There's even a quote in one of the books that says he wasn't happy unless he was fighting with someone. Which I've seen cats like that. I've seen cats that aren't happy unless they're swatting at something. I've never seen a human like that. So he had been a player and a ref previous. So he knew hockey. He loved hockey. And this is the interesting part. The guy loved hockey. He clearly absolutely loved hockey. But he wanted to control it. And he wanted to control other teams as well. And there's definitely some room for sympathy for him, even though, as I've set it up, part Harold Ballard, part George Steinbrenner, with some P.T. Barnum. These are not really overly... If you've seen The Great Showman, you are seeing a very sanitized version of P.T. Barnum. So, he bought the Toronto Ontarios in 1914. And the Toronto Ontarios is the least creative name in history. Call them, I don't know, Vancouver, British Columbias. I love it. It's great. So, the 14-15 season, so now they were the Toronto Shamrocks, they forfeited a game versus the Wanderers because 2 players had attended a funeral. Now, the owner of the Wanderers is Lichtenhein, that I mentioned in that passage I read out of that book. And he had gone to Livingstone and said, look, we'll make up the game later. It's not fair. 2-year players go to a funeral, and if you're saying 2 players going to a funeral shouldn't mean a forfeit, it did back then. There was no 20-man roster. They just didn't have enough players to play the game. But what's interesting is Lichtenhein looked at those 2 points he gets from the forfeit, and he's like, that can help us win the league title. Yeah, I'm not giving those up. So he reneges on it. He's like, no, I'm not doing it. To which Livingstone loses his mind because he was promised, and that promise wasn't followed through on. And that's where the battle was. Really, primarily, it was Lichtenheim versus Livingstone. And the difference is the other owners could deal with Lichtenheim. They could not deal with Livingstone. It just could. I picture every meeting they had as owners, just everybody being quiet while Livingstone raged. That's how I picture it. So, before the 1916-17 season, the owner of the Wanderers, Lichtenheim, offered $3,000 to Eddie Livingstone for his team and to go away. So I will give you $3,000. This is over 100 years ago. That's a lot of money. I will give you this money to sell the team and just promise not to come back. Livingstone, or Livy, as we're calling him here, countered by offering him $5,000 to go away. It's this kind of stuff that makes me wish that there was footage somewhere of these arguments, something. Even where the NHL forms, there isn't really notes that get taken from that. Frank Calder, who would be first president for the National Hockey League, didn't take notes. And so what I read you there is as close as you're going to get to finding out exactly what went on in there. Basically, it didn't go well. Now, he wasn't popular locally or with the media either. So there was no sympathy from fans because he threatened to move the team to Boston. Yes. Over the cost of ice time at the Toronto Arena. So the arena was charging him what he felt was an exorbitant amount. He's like, fine, I'll just move the team to Boston. That's not going to make you popular in Toronto. It's not going to make you popular with the media either. And what's interesting is that when the NHA says, well, fine, we're done, when there was discussion about just shutting down the Toronto teams, the media in Toronto was fine with that because they wouldn't have had to deal with Livingstone anymore. And there were articles saying, this is great. Yeah, we may not have a team anymore, but at least we don't have to talk to Eddie Livingstone anymore. So, again, he just seemed very, very unpopular. So, the Blue Shirts, because you got to change the name of the Toronto team regularly, their play was suspended due to World War I. Basically, they had created a battalion team. They wanted to have an even number of teams. The battalion actually gets called into active duty for World War I. And so the Blue Shirts are shut down as well. Now, I can't prove that this was a moment of, see, if we have an odd number of teams, it's easy enough to schedule. But if we have an even number of teams, we don't have to deal with Eddie. So they had 2 teams in Montreal, a team in Ottawa, and a team in Quebec. So if you don't have the 2 Toronto teams, And this is where the media was like, well, okay, good. All right, we don't have to deal with Livingstone. If we don't get a team back, all right, fine. So, again, to everyone's delights right here on the board. And, of course, Livy files for a court injunction. He was very litigious. He liked lawsuits. Now, here's the funny thing. He is perfectly within his rights. Again, think about this. The NHL creates a team. They go, all right, we're going to put a team here. It's going to be members of an army battalion. Just think about that now. It's like that would never happen. But let's just say that they create an expansion team. And then for whatever reason, that expansion team can't get their players. And so they go, all right, so how are we going to do this? You know what we should do? We should take the Toronto Maple Leafs out of the NHL too. Like, it's just, to me, it seems kind of odd, right? Kind of odd that they're going, well, yeah, that team's gone, but, we could suspend Livy's team. I agree with that. That's a good idea. So, that's before that season. In the fall of 1917, first, they get together without Livingstone, and the owners say, we quit. We resign. We're done. Have the league to yourself, Eddie. We're done. It's over. Go ahead. Have your league. Put it in your treehouse. We don't care. A month later, they didn't really leave much time. A month later, they meet at the Windsor Hotel. Minus Livy. Livy's not there. I don't think he even knew this was going on. Or they told him it was at a different hotel and giggled while, they were telling him. So, they formed the National Hockey League. They just take the NHA and change it to the NHL, which, according to one of the books I showed you there, might as well have stood for not having Livingstone. No Eddies. So, the no homers from Simpsons, this is no Eddies. And I'm pretty sure that on every NHL arena, they would have had his picture and not allowed. Nope. Would have been like he was a shoplifter. You're Eddie Livingstone. You're out the door. So they formed the league. I read you the quotes there for, he's got his league. He doesn't have a building because the arena in Toronto owns that team. So they let the arena own the team with the idea that, hey, if the arena owns the team, he can't sue the arena. Don't underestimate Eddie Livingstone. He tried. Now, the funny thing is they intended to reform the NHA a year later. Their planning was simple. We have this league. We like this league. We don't like Eddie. So we're going to change the name of the league. We're going to play under this name for a year. Then we're going to come back and we're going to form the NHA again because Eddie will have gotten bored and found something else to argue about with somebody else. They underestimated his ability to hold a grudge and his ability to argue because he took him to court and he sued. It was like a decade of lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. And here's the thing. It wasn't always for the same thing because the NHL challenged him at every turn. They not only didn't want him as a part of their league, they didn't want him as a part of any other league either. It's so bizarre. This is why I wanted to do an updated version of this video because it is this bizarre. So he sued for a decade, court case, and he doesn't lose these court cases. That's the interesting thing. They're not all thrown out. It's not like these court cases are thrown out. He wins money. But the owners are fine with him winning money if it means they don't have to deal with him. They are fine with pooling money, giving money to him to stay away, as Lichtenstein wanted 2 years before. Here's $3,000, pee off. Here's $5,000, you go away. Okay, whatever. So, his players were handed to Toronto's NHL team. So he had these players under contract. Now, this is not NHL contract time. They were contracted to him. They were his players. And so the NHL's like, hey, we'll pay you. Come play for us. So the players wanting to play hockey and realizing the NHA no longer exists. It's just Livingstone has this thing that can't do anything with because he doesn't have an arena. He doesn't have any players because now they're with, like, it's a mess, right? So they play. And the interesting part is that the litigation costs that are suffered by Toronto because he's suing the Toronto franchise, right? Ends up with them having to sell star players before the 18-19 season. So they won the Stanley Cup as an expansion team. This is why I always say when people say, well, you know, the Toronto did it as an expansion team. Expansion team. No, see, they're the same players. They're the same players. All that changed was no Eddie Livingstone. So they were a Livingstone-less team that first year. This is absolutely insane. So ultimately, Livingstone is awarded $10,000. Now he won $100,000. They appealed, and it was dropped to $10,000. Again, he wins court cases, but it doesn't matter. The NHL doesn't sit down with them and go, man, we need to work this out. We've got to sit down. We got to work this out. We have to. No. We do not want, we will pay whatever money it takes. The NHL almost went under numerous times over that first decade. There were definitely signs, especially, during the war, you're losing a lot of players who are going over to active duty. It's hard to keep that league together, right? And to keep things going. And there were definitely points where the league could have folded, and maybe we're talking about some other hockey league. I mean, it's not like we wouldn't have a hockey league. We just wouldn't have had the NHL and definitely wouldn't have been as we know it. So he tried starting a Canadian Hockey Association. He was going to base this out of Hamilton. All right, started my own league, Canadian Hockey Association. That'll get people talking. And base it in Hamilton. The NHL goes, pardon? So they took the Quebec Bulldogs, moved them to Hamilton. Now you can't have your league. He, 2 other times that I found, started a league and named a league that never went anywhere. He would just basically have, I've decided we're going to have teams in Boston, Detroit, Chicago, yada, yada, yada. Notice that these are areas the NHL would go to pretty quickly after. Not a coincidence. Now, this is the truth of it is that these would obviously have been natural markets to start hockey with in the U.S. But the fact that Livingstone names these targets and the NHL magically ends up going there, it's not a coincidence. It's really not. Oh, you're going there? Nope. Bruins, Red Wings, and of course the Blackhawks. So he makes those multiple attempts at starting his own league, which the NHL ultimately, laughs at or flat out blocks, right? They block him from going anywhere with it. And then he decides, okay, I'm going to go to the AHA, the American Hockey Association, or AHA. And I'm going to buy the Chicago Cardinals. So he buys the Chicago Cardinals. Now, the interesting thing is he didn't pay rent. So he doesn't pay the rent. And when they called him out on it, he thought that the former owner was going to be paying the rent, and he didn't have to. So, whoops. So the league was trying to work with the NHL. So the AHA is like, fine, we want to have some kind of a relationship with the National Hockey League. And Frank Calder, the president of the NHL, says, we would like to work with you. However, you have Eddie Livingstone as one of your owners. We need to get rid of him. And the AHA is like, we got you. So, again, I'm already giggling. So what happens is the players for the Chicago Cardinals are kind of taken, siphoned off by the Chicago Blackhawks. Players are sold to other teams from underneath Eddie Livingstone yet again. So Livingstone, who's choked at this point, says, fine, I'll just sell the team. And the league says, what team? Your players are gone. You don't have an arena. You don't have a team to sell. So he buys a team and he can't sell it. I'm sorry. I find that really funny. That just imagine, and it's a conversation Yvonne and I've had anytime Eddie Livingstone comes up. And he comes up a disturbing amount of times in my life. The fact that the National Hockey League hates him that much, just how bad does that how bad does he have had to have been that years later, like this is about a decade after the founding of the NHL, they're still like, Livingstone's trying to have a life, he's trying to own things. Can we ruin that? How can we ruin that? How can we, like, I pictured that every board meeting the NHL had would have Eddie's Corner, where they talk about Livingstone and how to ruin his life. I also imagine prank phone calls. I imagine siphoning gas out of his gas tank. Shaking up soda cans if he was buying pop in the store and then running away. Like, I picture them just following him around, just trying to make everything miserable, because it seems that way. He sued, of course, after the Chicago Cardinals he was told that doesn't exist. He sued Frank Calder, the president of the NHL, as well as 3 AHA execs. And he won money. He didn't win everything he was going for, but he did win money. Because what they did wasn't good. From his point of view. From their point of view, it was fantastic. We don't have to deal with him anymore. We just don't have to deal with him anymore. We will pay whatever fines, whatever we have to. He can get, because it's not criminal. And that's the thing. It's not like they did anything that they could end up in jail for. They just forced him out of the business. So it's purely monetary, what's going to happen from there. Now, he does give up, and it does kind of have a happy ending, kind of. So he would coach junior hockey after that in Ontario. But then there was a court case that ruled that 3 of his players should be in high school hockey. So he got all mad and sued over that as the coach. So really, he liked lawsuits. He liked arguing, and the NHL became the NHL because they didn't want to deal with him anymore. It was just too much drama. And it is to me endlessly entertaining, and I think it would lead to, I mean, you could make a series of this. You could make a really good movie out of this. And I mean, who would you get to play Eddie Livingstone? I just don't know who. You'd have to find, like, Dwight Schrute's. Yeah, I mean, basically, right? And even that, I'm kind of like, not really. Dwight could have his moments where he was a pretty decent guy. It doesn't sound like Eddie necessarily had that many, at least not around his cohorts, his compatriots, his peers, right? Yeah, this is a fascinating story that, again, I'm telling you for the second time today. I do think there's other information in here I didn't have in here the first time, because, again, I got those books since the first time. And I do recommend them, because it really gets into, especially the first season, because it really gets into how much the NHL went through, and the financial, we don't know if we're going to be around in a week kind of thing that was going on then. So, there you go. The tragic tale, take 2 of Eddie Livingstone, although I'll title it something else when I upload it. There you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video, and hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. We wouldn't have this logo if it wasn't for Eddie Livingstone. So, to his memory, thanks. I'll talk to you guys again soon.